Do you think it is getting increasingly difficult to have human in the loop in AI systems now?
Well, so it shouldn't be, in that you need to know
Right.
what is your process, right? So if you start with, and I hear a lot of founders talk about, an end to end process. I hear a lot of pharma folks saying, we want AI to solve this end to end,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
But then you have to go back to basics. In organizations, and I think the larger the organization, the more potentially complex things are, but no size organization is immune, right? There is invisible process steps and invisible knowledge, meaning that there are people who have been doing something or they just figured out a new way to do something. It's not written down, right? And they
Yeah.
are doing things. And so you've got this situation where um, you need to map out the process. You need to figure out what are the steps. And then you need to figure out, how do I accomplish from my end to my end? How do I accomplish these things? But maybe think about it in a more AI forward way. Do I still need to do all these steps or not? There has to be intentionality where
Hmm.
you're bringing AI in and how you're going to look at it. Let me give you maybe a couple of examples, right? Think
Sure.
about it like social media, right? Social media can propagate false information at scale in a way we haven't seen before.
Sure.
Well,
Sure. Yeah.
LLMs, they can do the same thing. They can hallucinate clinical information with rather absolute competence. What's the expression? It's something like, you know, sometimes wrong, but never in doubt. LLMs
Okay.
are sometimes wrong, but they are never in doubt.
Everyone knows. Yeah.
And so, in clinical development, an AI hallucinating, for example, eligibility criterion could delay a program by months. Worst case scenario can have huge patient impact. So the human needs to be in the lead to not only say, here's the guardrails of where I step in, here's the guardrails of what you do and don't do, but also here's where I intend to use AI and here's where I won't use AI. And I think this is where we're seeing also, to the earlier question you had asked, this tug and pull of forces, because
Hmm.
there's a fear of the unknown and there's an appetite of excitement, a potential to do things faster, to save money, to get better ROI.
Yeah.
But without that governance, and this is exactly what the FDA is in Victoria's translation saying, right?
Yes.
They are saying without the governance, you do not have AI that is safe to use. Right. And they actually,
But
by the way, even in January, right, earlier this year, there was a published guiding principles for good AI practice, right? One
yeah.
of the
Yeah.
principles was human centric by design. We just talked about that, right?
Yeah.
And another principle was data governance and documentation. If anyone online has not read that, it's a good read. Take a look.
Okay. Let me. So let's stress test this idea of human in the loop for AI, right? And I want to stress test this particularly with you, because you are the governance person, right?
Yeah.
Now, I need to know what are the pressures the data governance guy go through within a pharma company that today have two hypotheses. One is use as much AI as there is in the world to accelerate, so that we capture the competition, we capture the market faster, right? Another is, let's not do that, because if something goes wrong with AI, as happened with the FDA warning letter, the risk is much larger than the reward, right? And then both schools, I talk to so many pharma companies today, a lot of my clients, both schools are very prominent inside a pharma company today, right? So what does a data governance guy, how does a data governance guy manage this conflict of ideas?
Yeah. Data governance guy or gal
Yeah,
can,
sorry.
right?
Sorry about
Can
that. I'm still
um,
learning.
but it's a terrific, terrific question because this is, I would say, a really big tension point. This is where I would say also
Right.
digital transformation gets a lot of heat and a lot of
Yeah.
pressure from multiple sides of the business because you are in that translation bridging role and responsibility. So, from a data governance lens, I think there are a couple of key components, right? Number one, we have to think about what is our foundation, right? What are the critical data assets that we need in the organization? Right? And how do you make that determination? Well, some of it is going to be driven by the key critical business continuity programs and what we need to do to make sure those programs continue to run and that they're running on the most appropriate data. Then there's the
Mhm.
component of, well, how do we then do innovation? So there needs to be a protected, separate component of that ecosystem that says, well, we've got this new novel idea. We've got a team ready to go to test this new AI solution or a new pilot, but we need to make sure that our testing doesn't impact core business. So now we need to
Mhm.
figure out what does that look like from a technical, human, and data perspective, right? So that the
Okay.
processes allow us to keep that separate. And then there's all the other components around data governance. And I would say also AI program governance of how do you select what is the right mix of the portfolio, what is the right mix of data assets, and the component of how do we actually bring some of this innovation to life. Understand what is it that the user needs because we at times have users who would continue to do the same thing. I remember years ago, I was proposing that we migrate some of our data assets to a common data foundation. And it would have multiple layers, right? A raw landing zone, but then we would also curate the data. And I'll tell you why that's important. But I had a colleague who said, that sounds like a lot of work. That's 5 million, euros year over year. I can just hire 10 people to do that in Excel for a third of the price.
Right. Okay, I get that. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
I see where you're
there's
going with this. Yes.
challenges with that. Right. And so I mentioned also the curated layer. I mean, that's the other piece. I hear a lot on LinkedIn and in other places of people saying, look what LLMs did with the internet. We don't need AI ready data. We look what LLMs did. They were just came in, we just gave them everything, and that's great. In our world, that doesn't work as easily because
Yeah.
what is, you know, in row 3, column 12, the number 7 mean? You need
Yeah.
context, you need your knowledge graphs, you need the
Sure.
information that's going to tell you how these different components relate because you don't have words to give you those relationships unless you put the words and the context on top.
Sure.
And I think that's one of the reasons we're seeing context engineering in the past months really start to come to life as well. So, those are
Yeah.
just some of the examples of the stresses on and the responsibilities to really bring up and bring to life a governance layer that operates across the data, the analytics that you're trying to do, and ultimately the portfolio of all of the technology solutions.